Okay, can you hear me? Is that making any difference? Better with my normal voice?
Yes.
Okay, and everyone can hear?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're going to now unroll the thangka. And I'm going to go through the process, Anne will help me. And oftentimes with the thangkas, one of the most important things to reiterate what Anne said is that you need to make sure when you're moving a thangka, especially if they're large, that your pathway from wherever the thangka is to where you're going to unroll it is clear. But you also have to make sure, and it's very important with all the objects, that there's a space. You have cleared the space before you get to where you're going. So you have you don't have to get here and then move tons of stuff. You just want to make sure, and you have to have a vague idea, if you can, of the size of your thangka, so you have made a table big enough. And this is for the purposes of observing and looking at the thangka. If you're hanging it, it would be the same thing. You would need a table next to where you're going to hang it. You would put the table there and you would unroll it. And I know there's a process of doing this. So I think when you hang in the monastery, you probably hang it and then unroll it. And then you do if it has a veil, then you do the veil. This is for the purpose of examination. So there's a lot of things we're going to talk about the thangkas and how to store them and how to roll them. But today we're going to look at the way to unroll it and handle it, because they're very sensitive objects, as you all know, and so we would like to help you handle them in a sensitive fashion. So this one has been wrapped in muslin or cotton, and so you always try and find out where you take the cover off first.
You might just say something about the covering.
Yeah.
It's useful.
Okay. So this is cotton. It's probably it's local. You can find this locally, but it's also we use muslin. So the calico or muslin, as we call it, that's perfectly fine to use, and I think it's a really good cover for the thangkas. If they're lying like this in storage, and if you wrap it in the muslin, it's just another layer of protection. So if there's birds get into the monastery, there's any kind of, hopefully not, water ingress, dust, all those things, it'll keep your thangka clean. And so that's and it's very inexpensive, and we just cut it to the size of each thangka, and we'll show how to do that later. This has got another thangka.
Surprise.
Okay. I know, where'd that come? And so we've got it on here. The top is usually always the first edge of the thangka. These have been tied. So what I would like to do is we would move it to the edge of the table, so the top is at the edge of the table, and we always handle it on the edge. We never do this. That we try to handle it on the edge, always.
Why do you all think that is?
Because
The center has all the material, the main painting.
And what would happen?
Yeah.
So, okay?
Anything could be happen.
Yes. Did you all hear that? Okay. And I left a hazard in my way.
Yeah.
This is a hazard. So.
But nobody told you.
Yeah, and no one said anything. So one of the things that's really important is to very observe. Always watch what's going on. Always looking where you're going. And if someone else is moving something and there's a hazard in their way, you just say, stop, or excuse me, I'll help you. And so, make sure you can, it's just really important to help each other and watch. I'm sure you do, but it's just very important. So, we have this thangka now. Where are we going to put it? Any ideas where we might put this thangka for the moment?
Yeah, two of us can.
You can put this here and probably on the vertical line.
I think so. But maybe we should move
It's the other way around.
Yeah.
That sounds good. The other thing that Teresa's doing is she's verbalizing what it is that we're doing. So also I know what we're going to be doing. And sometimes you say, okay, we're going to lift now. And we do it like that.
We work in tandem. So that's why I say, okay, we're moving this now. So we're going to roll it. So we'll just gently roll it this way to let it get covered. Sometimes these aren't tied and the top rod will flop over. Yeah. This is wrapped, so it's not going to do that, but it could. It could.
But we're still automatically, I'm seeing what the both of us are doing, and we keep touching that rod.
We're watching it. Okay, so we're going to move this slightly. I think this is this has got the string hand, but we're going to move the manuscript first.
Is it not going to be okay?
If it's very rolly and it kind of sits there and you may have an incline, no place is even, I'll put a little thing, just a little block of some sort right here so it doesn't roll off the table while I'm going over here moving this. I have seen that happen. And so it's, there's solutions to this, but I always use a string. And I use a soft label if I have soft objects, and I try and find somewhere where it may stay on. It's not always safe to do it onto to one of the ties, but actually you can tie it onto that as long as you don't tie it tightly and you keep it loosely. Then at least it stays with the object. I'm sure this was this way because it's a very good idea to have the label where you can see it at all times. If you put it on the string, it's in the middle, and you can, you'd have to unroll the whole thing. And sometimes the way they're storing them, you can just unroll the end, open the end of the cotton and see the label. So those are important things for collection management and care. But it's also you have to think about how you label things, and you want to make sure that your label itself is not causing any damage to the object. So now.
With the books, Teresa, you know how they have the labels on the outside of the wrapping, and I think you've seen some objects, large format objects, where the label is also,
on the
wrapped
wrapping.
on the wrapping. Is that do you tend to do both, or do you tend to do one or the other, and any risks? It's always a good idea to have the number on the outside of the object. So if you have a wrapping, you put the number on the wrapper. That's the safest way to do it. But wrappers can also be removed and lost. And so you do always need. And if you put a label on the wrapper, but what you can do is you can slip a label with no string, just the label. You can slip it inside. So when you unroll it, there is the number. I mean, in the past, people wrote the numbers directly on the objects. I think this one has the number written directly on the object. It's an old practice. It's the way they did things, but we don't do that anymore because we have discovered it's very important what you write, what you use to write on the object. If you write with a certain type of pen, it often transfers. It'll transfer onto the object, so you'll see this number like on the whole length of the back, maybe, or it will come through, so you'll see the number through, so you'll have a beautiful tonka, and then you'll have a number showing. But so it's really important to think about how you label an object. And yeah.
Usually during textile conservation, what they do is there is also a way of tagging the object by stitching the label onto the object. So in case of tonka, how should we?
You can do that with a tonka if the fabric is stable enough to do that. But again, if you take it's a cotton label, and I can show you examples of that later. It's a cotton label. You write on the cotton label with a very waterproof pen. They're very specialized, and I have noticed through my career the same pen that's sold in museums and used in museums all over the world, they transfer too.
What about the Sigma pen, the usually conservation grade archival material?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, they can transfer because they're made in a big factory. And I did a whole test on these because when I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they had been using these, and 30 years later, the ink was transferring.
And so they're not as stable as we are hoping they are. We've talked to the industry. People have asked them to make them more stable. They won't tell us what it's made of. So we have no idea. And so again, we can't even analyze these. We'd have to do a very special, spend a lot of money to analyze what the ink is. But the one ink that used to be, and tell me if I'm wrong, that's fairly stable. And Mike, where's Mike? Has he left?
Yes.
Is India ink. Yeah. And it's stable. And you can write on the cotton tape and use India ink. It's got a little bit of shellac in it, but it doesn't transfer. It's difficult though, and you have to use a pen, a calligraphy, not a calligraphy, but an old style quill pen. And a lot of people, the reason why people moved over to using the Pigma pens, the stick, is because it was easier. And they were told that it was stable. But India ink is one of the things that's very stable and won't run. And you just have to make sure when you're making your labels, you're doing it away from the object. You don't have it anywhere near your object. And then you have to let it dry. You have to let it dry I sometimes let them dry for a week. So, yeah, just to make sure, because then it oxidizes. Then it has a long chance.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the ink oxidizes and then it binds with the cotton. And so then it's really important, you can leave it overnight, but I do think it's more important to let it just oxidize, dry out completely, and then you can put it on your object. What were you going to?
Is it mandatory to use cotton, or because in our case we are using Tyvek?
Tyvek is perfect too. Yeah, Tyvek is, and you can write it with India.
Fancy.
Yeah, it's just cotton tape's cheaper. And more, cotton tape, the cotton twill tape is cheaper. You can buy a big roll of it. Tyvek's very expensive. I don't know how easy Tyvek is to get here. It's a wonderful.
We usually order from the same.
From the Delhi, from CS, whatever. Yeah. So, before, things weren't so easy to get here, but now they are. So, okay. So, yeah.
I have one question / comment, which is, I have some sort of reaction to people marking sacred objects as well, and I know in some original communities it's seen as very bad because the object is alive. So actually putting this is seen as a brand, like branding it. Maybe not in a monastery setting, but when it goes to a museum, the first thing they do with these sacred objects is they come in and they write on it. And then some objects have had to go back to the original community, and they've said, well, no, you need to remove that. It's not good. So I wanted to find out from you all, do you think it's okay to be marking, for instance, on the chorten, this is the number, or if we can type, or would you want to tie it on with the tag instead? What's best for you all as it is, your Geshe-las and venerables? What's your view?
In our case, we do not directly write the number on it. Although we have the mixture, we prepare the mixture of paranoids, preparing a varnish of a sort to write on it, but we avoid it using on the ritual aspect. We rather prefer taking the object.
Okay. And in the monasteries?
Mostly we usually don't do such things, yeah.
Okay.
We don't maintain.
But it also happens that in monasteries sometimes people give donations, particularly with metal. They mark with the smith.
Okay. Yes.
With the
Yeah.
The donor's name. Yeah.
But that's different.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my preferred way is always a label. That's not on the object, because this can be removed, and anything written on the object. On a tanka, if you do the textile label, yes, that can be removed. But if you write it directly on the tanka, it can't be. It's very difficult to remove. We try to use everything is removable, but I can tell you to do that often involves solvents, all sorts of things that aren't good for the environment and aren't good for the object.
So, it won't damage the object too much, but it's still over-handling, what I call, and over-interventive. So it's really important to think about that when you're actually labeling if you need to label your object. Museums need to label their objects. They need to know what they have for their collection. I know that manuscripts, as Anne said, the wrappers have the label on the outside, and that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I know in some monasteries they have boxes for the thangkas, and so they're labeled. So I know that there's ways of labeling, and all those are really good ways of doing things. So this is, we're coming kind of from, as Anne's asking about the community, and I'm coming, from a museum perspective. So the things I'm talking about are the things that are done in museums. So you don't have to do them in your monasteries. If you have your own system, that's what it's perfectly, it's the best thing to do. So there's in a monastery, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is a way sometimes to tie the thangkas together. In a museum setting, we probably wouldn't do that because and this was very well done. It's not tight, it's not, it's not damaging, and it's on the edge. This one, it may be on the painting, but I look at it and it's very loose. But one of the things you want to be very careful about when you're handling a thangka is, as we said earlier, not to handle it where the painted surface is. So always on the edge. So if you need to tie it on the end. And try not to tie it in the middle. It makes it a little difficult, a little loose sometimes, but I would then rather wrap it in a cloth and use the cloth to hold it together if you need to. So I'm just going to take these undone, if I can.
Teresa, it might be worth just mentioning that cotton tape, if there are no ties for it, then simple unbleached, undyed cotton tape is very easily available and therefore is good.
Yeah, and that is a very good point. There is, if you need to tie something and there are no ties left, or the hanging system on the thangka is no longer there, like this one's very short, so you would not be able to use that, as we discovered yesterday. We would not be able to use that. So, and I always try, it's difficult when they're very long, is to never wad them up. I just try and keep them. And one of the things that I always look at to make sure, and if I'm going to have you all come by for just a second, this particular one used to have a tie here, and it's missing now, and this one is barely hanging on. And so that would be a reason not to use that to tie the thangka, because it'll just fall off. So if you all want to come and look at that, please, because you can't see it from where you are.
Gorgeous.
Yes, maybe go one way.
Yes,
and it was very expertly pointed out. I called this a tie, and I didn't mean to. This is part of the hanging system, and the one that's missing is actually one. It's the hanging system, and it's such in poor condition. It fell apart. So this end would have been attached to where it's missing. So that's really important. And we'll talk about hanging thangkas that are in this kind of condition. There's other ways to do it. So Anne, do you want to help? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to use this side of the table, and Anne, that side.
This is really good, isn't it? The fact that we can walk around the table. The table is not too big, not too small. Yeah.
And when you cover the table, and I think we're using paper right now, but as my brain's gone, sorry. As Anupam had pointed out, a cloth on the table is really good too. So, but you have to make sure that it doesn't slip around. So if you put a cloth on the table, sometimes I use little clips on the side to keep it from moving. And so, but it also helps the objects kind of unroll easily because it's got a nice little
truth to it, a little roughness. So you don't always want that with everything, but with textiles, it can help you roll it out and keep it smooth. So it's important. Okay, Anne, ready? Okay, and we're just going to undo this very slowly. We never do it in a hurry. And this is really interesting. This thangka has a silk cloth covering the back. I don't know why. It could be because they didn't want the inscriptions that may be on the back to be seen. We're not really sure. But as you see, as we're unrolling it, does anyone notice anything?
The stains?
Yeah, the stains, yeah. So this gives you an idea of the condition of this object. So even before you get it all the way unrolled, you can see that there might be some severe damage. So you observe it constantly. And as we do, let's stop here. So we've, I want you to look at this and maybe tell me some issues that might be damaging to the object. It's a big, broad question and kind of a specific question. But if you want to, is there anything with the painting that you see already? Is there anything with the textile that you see already? And again, everybody want to come and look and then give me your ideas? Sure. And what did you see on the thangka that might be a problem? And how do you think it happened?
I think there are multiple, type of textile used. One is silk, cotton, and also there is wood, which itself is a different material, and the paint is paper. So because of that multiplicity of nature, I think it is difficult to conserve and properly handle as well. And because of that, there is some kind of like you can see a lot of deterioration, stain.
Is there anything else? Anybody noticed?
It didn't fold carefully.
Yes, that's the biggest problem I see. Is that when you're rolling a thangka, and if the veil is, especially if the veil is missing, the veil is a good protector. So what's happened as this thangka has been rolled, it's been rolled because they're always rolled from the feet up, so the head is always at the top, and that's a good. The bottom rod is a very good roll. This has been folded, and as you get to you get tighter and tighter. And then you've got these folds here, and you've got these folds here. Your point about it being multiple types of material and all being sewn together, it's impossible to make them perfectly flat. There's nothing in the world that, you can be an expert, and it will still, the textile will always move and it'll always change. So one of the things that we try and do is we put an interleaving, if the veil is, especially if the veil is missing, but also with the veil, we put an interleaving. Anupam has gone off to the market to see what he can find that might be an appropriate interleaving. And when I say interleaving, I mean a sheet of paper, but it has to be a good sheet of paper, not something that will cause more problems with the paint. So we brought some things that you can purchase at the how do you say it? The conservation supply place in Delhi.
Delhi.
In New Delhi. And it really helps. What it does is it takes the pressure off the textile. And so it'll stop, and you can try, I mean, this is a very damaged textile. This is also another point to show. Did anyone notice how fractured this border is? This is okay. It's got a couple of holes, but those were damaged. This is from degradation. These are falling apart, and they've reached a certain point in their life where there is no return. They're going, and you can conserve them. It's a very technical process, which I wouldn't want to have any of you try and undertake now, because it involves taking the tonka completely apart. And there's multiple reasons to take the tonka completely apart to conserve it. But I also have a problem. That's where we get into deconsecrating and all those kind of things. That's something within the community that needs to be discussed before you do that. For me, I would ask someone important.
Yes, we're going to go this way. And you see, as I'm unrolling it, you see there's things that are happening on the back. No idea how this happened, but it's obviously had something come up against something.
I think one thing that's worth mentioning is also when you're doing something, whatever you're doing in terms of handling, and it's more than one person, it needs to be clear kind of who's in charge. So in this case, yeah, Teresa's in charge, so we take our instructions from one person. And that's just particularly important when you start to do large projects. You need to have one person in charge of the team, and they have the authority to say, stop, turn left, turn right. So it's just common sense really, but with small objects, it's less obvious perhaps. But when you have a group of you, it's just good you have one person who's a team leader who you basically you do what they say.
Sorry. Okay, so we've fully unrolled this now, and can anybody tell me what's happening with this tonka?
Yes.
What type, I think I'll just be plain, what type of damage do you see?
No spell check.
It seems to be severely damaged by water.
Yes. And what else about it? Can you see anything?
There are some fraying of threads.
Sorry?
Fraying of threads.
Yes. And is it as bad here as it is down there?
It's bad down there.
Yeah. And can you see, there's several types of damage on the textile. Can you tell me what they are?
Loosening of threads.
There are creases and folds.
Loosening of threads.
Mm-hmm. We call those splits. And is there, again, do you see the same kind of issue that was happening here? Yeah? Yes, and that's a very specific kind of textile damage. We have no idea what caused it. It could be a stain, it could be food, it could be anything, but what happened is that one little space, more so than the rest of the textile, has carbonized. And so it's no longer a textile. It's like, if you touch that, it will break. I mean, a lot of this will break, but that particular area, and so it's going to make a big hole. It's going to
we can support it, we can do all sorts of treatments to support it, but eventually, because it's now got to the stage where it's completely falling around, it will powder. And eventually it will go away completely, so you'll be left with a hole. And we call that shattered silk or carbonized. And it's a very tricky thing to deal with. But I was just noticing something, maybe not. But again, you said water. You know, there's water damage here. It's interesting though, the water damage only starts here. And we're not magicians. We don't know what happened in the past. But someone the other day told me something. What do you think, how do you think this water damage started? Why do you think it started from here?
Maybe a leaky roof?
Well, but is there another?
If you roll it, the thread which roll it.
This looks like if it was. This does look like it was hanging. I don't think. I don't think this rolled when tonka is damaged when it's rolled and it gets wet. Has very specific, very patterns. It has this. It has a very patterned look. The water will have marked where on the bottom of the tank. If the tank has been laying this way, the water will mark the bottom. It'll always go to the bottom, and so you'll see that. But what about this top half?
Well, project has another wheel earlier, due to which the water starts from there.
I think water starts from there, but this is a silk and it dries.
I think there is a little water staining here, so the silk will stain equally, because you see it's all stained along here. It's stained along, not so much on this side. But I think, we don't know if this is true, but it is possible that the veil was there, and this may be why the veil is missing. I haven't examined it enough to see if there was a veil. There's no remnants of a veil anywhere on this, but it is a possibility. So I do think that that's an issue, and it's something to always look at. Sometimes, because of the nature of the veil, it will hold the water, and then all of a sudden release it, and then it just goes down. And so in your buildings where there might be the problem with water, you go around and you check all the time, and you just look, you just keep watching. So sometimes what I would do is just one time out of the day, I would just take a leisurely walk and go around and look at everything in the building, and so then that way I can always see if there's something happening, and that way you can either move the object, because that's very important. If you find that there's water damage or there's water coming in the building, you move the object. It's the most important thing. If it's already wet, then you have to be very careful about how you move the object, because if you were to roll this when it was wet, you probably damage the paint surface, because a lot of the old pigment paints are fairly stable, but it depends on what's written underneath the initial drawing. If it's done with lac or with a vegetable dye, which sometimes it is, that is very fugitive, and it'll come. We'll show you some examples of this. It'll come. So if you have to take a tonka off and it's wet, don't roll it. Try and keep it as flat as possible. Use 4 people, 2 people at the top. Don't touch the painted surface. And the best thing you can do is to lay it out flat and let it dry. You can, there's tricks to make it so it won't stain so much, but I think it's important just to lay it out and let it dry, and don't touch it. Yeah. And that way you'll keep the pigments all in the right places, so you won't the images won't get disfigured, which is really important. So I think because we're running out of time, and we do have days, so we have lots of time to discuss things. We want to get onto some other objects, and we're going to have lunch at 1 o'clock today, if that's okay, from 1 to 2. And if there's any more questions about the tonkas, and write it down, and then we can have a discussion about it all, if that's okay with everyone. Okay.
Yeah. I think, would you want them to put it in the chat, or it gets too confusing in the chat?
Yeah, if you put it in the chat, but sadly I can't read Tibetan. So it would have to be in English. But if you want to write it down though, then we'll have a wrap up. We're going to have many discussion groups, so we'll constantly be able to come back to these things, and they're going to be here, so we can talk about them. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry. I did mention that, but we're going to look at these. The reason why we're talking about these now is we're going to have you take your photographs, and we're going to have you in groups, as I think I said, but I don't know if they were here. We're going to have you in groups, and we want you to stay in the same group, and you'll move from each object, and you'll look at each object, and we want you to write down what you see. And we're calling this a condition report. And then we're going to give you some forms that are condition reports. And if we have time, we can start filling those out. But we'll be here and we'll move around to each table and talk with you all about these things. Okay?
Anupam, you mentioned a condition report. I've got one here with a diagram of the tanker. Shall I distribute this for the time being?
Please.
Yeah.
Those are very good.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to just take them and pass it on.
In case I'm causing damage, with my hands onto the page. It's okay? Yeah. Okay. Mike, because we have to unwrap this, shall we move it to the center? You happy with that?
So we've got it, we're picking up underneath, there's a board underneath, and there's a board on top, so his hands are underneath there, and together, just so we've got more space to unwrap it.
And somebody has kindly started to unwrap the cover already.
Hang on. Okay.
It's quite inside. I might just, how do you want to do? Lift and then go. Got it.
So this is
yeah, very important. You all know this better than we do. Beautifully labeled. I'm aware that you all do this day in, day out. Very familiar with handling the material. This one is slightly tucked underneath. And the first thing that we tend to do is we look at it, but I'm also looking, it's great with it being on the cloth because I can see, are there any, missing bits onto the cloth, and the cloth is a good color. Sometimes, with the dyes with the yellow in color, it helps with insect repellent. So there's a kind of natural insecticide with the yellow in color, with the red, not so much.
That feeds into, I think we were having a discussion yesterday about what you should do, like to deter insects. And somebody was asking, what about naphthalene? And then I was mentioning also about neem, which is been traditionally used in India and here and in this part of India as an insect deterrent. I think originally the cloth, you may correct me, but I think they were dyed with turmeric as well originally, and that turmeric also has insecticidal properties.
That's the best way of saying it.
I think that's continued. I think that these probably are simply these coloured yellow, but I think that's one of the history of why the yellow cloths were traditionally used, and there may well be a reason within other reasons as well.
You mean like colour significance?
Yeah, being symbolic, and also this colour, but there's also was a reason, I think, originally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what we're doing is we're looking for any fragments that have come off. We're looking for insect activity. We're looking for mold first. So we check it. We check it first. This board, ideally, for I think for me, I think it would be better if it was, you know, I prefer slightly wider, actually. And then this is a plywood, which is good. Maybe that was all, you know, that we could get at that time. But your wood is going to react, you know, to your paper. So if it's all you can have, that's fine. But maybe you can put in a barrier paper just in between the board and there. And if you've got some of the good woods, then you could use that, but they're expensive. So yeah, barriers are good. Yeah, and maybe no coating with, you know, paint or anything. Yeah. So maybe what we could do is just turn it. I don't know which way. Oh, there we go.
We're talking about gloves as well, whether you wear gloves or whether you use clean hands. I'm wearing gloves. I normally don't wear gloves, but I'm wearing gloves because I've hurt my finger actually, so I can't wash my hands properly. So you just have to make that judgment yourself. You know, if you do handle directly without gloves, then your hands need to be clean.
I wash my hands.
Yeah. So, you know, it's common sense stuff, but it's good to think about that. You know, and particularly if you're handling, sometimes you get something out of storage and it's got a lot of dust, dirt on it. Even if you've got gloves, you can then transfer it onto your paper, your manuscript. So sometimes it's better once you've got the thing out of storage, particularly if it's a little bit dusty, you have to do some preliminary cleaning, then you wash your hands and then you're able to handle it safely without causing any more dirt.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's just it's just common sense stuff, but it's sometimes, you know, just because you've got gloves on, actually, if your gloves are dirty, it's no good. So, and also if they do get dirty, you have to discard them. So just bear that in mind.
With some of the, just going on about what Mike has beautifully pointed out, is when if the outside of the book is very dusty and the wrapper is, and you have your gloves on to handle that, and then the inside is not so dirty, and when you take it off, do also bear in mind that, you know, are your hands a bit sticky or sweaty from that, which is why he's re-emphasizing it. Yeah? Okay. We're checking, we're looking, and what are we seeing? I don't know if everybody wants to come a little bit closer, if you wish. Yeah. Are you all tired? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good if everyone come a bit closer, because from the sound of it, you've all got care of manuscripts and you're probably handling manuscripts very frequently. So it's good to get your input on what you think as well.
So, I mean, we put the a barrier paper here. I'm looking at this. This looks like what do people think this is? Why is this like this? Kind of wavy. What happened here?
One, because of the size of the barrier, as it happened to the edges, I think similar cases is at the length as well.
So you can get some damage, but also this seems to be, this is one size, and then this one is another size. Yeah, and when I feel this, you know, this feels, you know, it feels okay. It feels like, well, it's like paper. It's good, so therefore it must be paper. But this feels even softer. It's very soft. No, and maybe, so why would the paper go like that?
It was not arranged properly. Yeah. So that's why it came towards this edge, and then it nearly double folded flat. So it destroyed.
It did definitely, but there's a surface damage to it, and we're seeing like little holes, and maybe we're not so much. If you look closely, you can see little watermarks along there. So I'm speculating that maybe this has gotten wet at some point, and it's the top page. So when we go through, what we'll see. Oh, look. What am I doing? I'm using some spatula, something that's thin. If I don't have one, I might actually just use a piece of paper and slide it through. What I'm being very careful not to do is if I slide it through and there's a tear, you can see what can happen. I can tear it. Yeah, I don't want to do that. But you know, accidents do happen even with the best that we can do. So I use this to lift it up. It's a force of habit. Plus I like it. So Mike, shall we just turn the page? So with this, I'm checking to see, is this attached to here? Because sometimes the paper sticks, no? Yeah. So again, it's the same thing. Instead of doing a test lift, we are just checking.
The other thing is, because it looks like it's got wet in the past, it means the paper's going to be a bit more fragile even than it would normally be. So it's just a good idea to...
Yeah, it feels like one part.
Usually, upper paper usually thick.
Yeah. And occasionally, I think this might be, see it's stuck here? So maybe it's pages that are stuck together when it was originally created. Sometimes what we might do is we might cut a piece of paper and slide it underneath, just so instead of handling this, we could handle it on a support or a carrying paper. That makes sense? Mike?
Yes, it's attached at the end, so...
yeah, and that's attached.
So this one is also here.
So what were you saying? Maybe the glue has come off?
So actually what we need to do is to pick up the 2 pages.
It's almost 3, no?
That's it.
So we're watching together.
So we've got hand underneath, just to support it.
Shall we try to turn over, or too complicated?
I would put it down as it is for the moment, and then that's the... yeah.
So this is very fragile. Yeah. But we're taking our time, and then maybe there's some important information. But something like that, it's hard to handle for digitization as well. So sometimes for digitization, what you do is you can be very careful with it, take it for digitization. But when you have conservators around, maybe this is something that we would want to stabilize first, and then send it to have its picture taken.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, but with digitization, which I think we all acknowledge is a good thing of preserving knowledge and distributing information, that care has to be taken with the digitization. I mean, I know here in the library here, it's good because it's an in-house operation, so people can see what's going on and be very involved. But I do know other collections where they've had things digitized. They've sent things out to be digitized without having enough supervision of it. And with fragile things, you need to be there to keep an eye on things, to advise people, because the people who are doing the digitization, if they're not part of your staff, they may not understand anything about how fragile these things are.
Yeah, you know your objects.
You do, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of your job as custodians, is to oversee those things, even if you're not doing the digitization yourself. Yeah.
When going through a manuscript, sometimes we have to make sure we keep the order. Else it's a problem. And some of these, there's a term we use called pagination. So there is an order. Maybe you know it because you've memorized the sutra or the tantra. And sometimes there is a number associated, but that way you can check to see, is one missing, or folio 40 is here, but it's supposed to be up here. So you check the order. It's kind of obvious, but it's good to do that.
Well, sometimes it's difficult with a binding, particularly a Western style binding as well, where the binding has come apart, and it may not be completely obvious which is what the order of the pages is. So that I think what Anne's saying is just to, when you're taking it apart, to make sure that you don't muddle up the order. Keep the order of the pages as they were.
And definitely don't rebind it in the wrong order, which does happen. But sometimes some people, they will take a soft pencil, so not a hard pencil, like one of the B ones, and you sharpen it, and then you write on a piece of paper to just take that edge off, and then you number it consistently in the same location, but softly. Yeah.
Just another thing I'm just noticing while we were around the object is generally try and stick to using pencil for your notations. When you're doing examination reports or filling out forms next to your objects, stick to using pencil and not biro. It's just if you get biro on ballpoint pen, it's very difficult to get off, and it often will stain things very badly. So try and just stick to using pencil when you're around objects and when you're doing your condition reports.
Unless it's like a consecration thing, you know, then. But the ink is great quality ink. What's going on here? Everybody knows that? Yeah, insects. Yeah. I will debate with you about that being silverfish. Because what they like to do, and I'm sure that there probably is silverfish on that, they're a high humidity indicator. You have silverfish when the humidity is high, but how they like to eat is they like to graze on the surface. So I know silverfish damage. So there may be some around here. I think that might be paper, but if we have the magnification, then it's good, and then we can tell. But this is some larvae, and they call exit holes. So sometimes you can identify what type of insect because of the size of the hole and how they make the message they leave behind and what they take away, if that makes sense.
And the probability is that this has happened a long time ago.
Yeah, perfect.
But you can see sometimes, just if you're looking for any signs of any insect activity, a bit of magnification does, and mentioned using your mobile phone as well is very good. Just you've got a bit of light so you can see, and if there are any bodies of any insects, you may need to gather them so you can identify what you're looking at.
Yeah, that's very helpful, and we know what frass is. You know how insects, when they eat things, they're these tiny little powder that's left behind, sometimes round in nature. Yeah, so that's the forgive me, insect excrement that is left behind. And you can also try to identify them with that, but life is short.
So what's the best way to morphia to affect the insect?
Well, it's debated, and it depends whether the insect is dead or alive. We're going to have to go into this because also this is within a religious context. So many people here, maybe they took a bodhisattva vow, so they shouldn't be killing things. So you all have to decide on that. What we would tend to do is we would brush the surface, and we will be doing that here. And then we would gently clean the surface of it. And you can, if it were me, I would brush the insects away. If it was in a museum in the West, and then a lot of the time they treat at low temperature instead of putting insecticide, or you can treat in an anoxic environment. If you do that, you're killing the insects. And maybe that's not appropriate, and it's not possible because it's not so good. So it would be really brushing away the larva and any of the other insects, and then maybe you release. But you'll decide what works for you. And anything, I just want to say that we're coming in here as conservators and saying, okay, well, this is how you do things, but this is really how we approach things. So it's up to you to say, well, okay, I'll take that information, and that's not going to be so appropriate to me because it's culturally inappropriate, or it's not applicable in my belief system because it's going to cause harm. So you have your conversation with your conservators, and sometimes you may have like a specialist conservator coming away, and they're not Buddhist. And maybe they come from a different type of Buddhism. Maybe they're like, they might be Hinayana, Mahayana, or Vajrayana. Maybe there's some differences to the approach. So you have to decide what's good for you. So we might say things, but we might not be aware of what is appropriate. So you have to tell us, well, we give a treatment proposal. We say this is what we would like to do to the object. We have to tell you that. This is what we would like to use. Is that okay? And you tell us, because you're the custodians, is that appropriate? Is that not appropriate? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And then you move on. Just because someone is a specialist coming in, they're a specialist in the materiality, but they might not be a specialist in the significance of this object, because we keep speaking about the tangible, as well as the intangible nature of the object. And this is very important, and you all are the experts, so you have to say, and when you work with conservators, then you have to explain that to them, because they don't know. They might have good intentions, but not the wisdom.
Going back to the, dealing with insects on things that somebody was asking about, naphthalene, but generally neem leaves are good as a deterrent, and particularly as part of a kind of ongoing housekeeping program. If you're continually refreshing your neem leaves, then it's often a very good way of deterring a large number of insects. If you've got a major infestation, obviously that's not going to work. We're talking about sort of a regular routine of housekeeping within your manuscript collection. And again, don't put the neem leaves in direct contact with the paper because it can cause staining. What you need to do is to have your neem probably in a cotton bag or something that's in an enclosure, maybe within a wrapper, but not actually in direct contact with the paper. And that way, when the neem is exhausted, which is probably you need to check it every 3-6 months and replace it, because it won't continue to be effective because the volatile components in it, they evaporate. It becomes less effective over time. So I tend to, in terms of as a insect repellents, I tend to shy away from using chemical solutions. Go back to the traditional, which was to use neem. Some of them I've seen in South India as well, where people have also had little bags with sweet flag and turmeric and other things in them, which have also traditionally been used. I'm not sure scientifically about their effectiveness, but it's a practice that is part of the routine maintenance of the library as the replacement of these herbs. But I do know that neem is effective, so I suggest that as neem is also available, that would be part of your routine of your constant your housekeeping, if you like.
In Barbados, in the tropics, we use bay leaf and clove and stuff like that, but really emphasizing you have to replace it. You can't just leave it in there and then expect it to work. With this, we would just be going over, turning the pages very, very carefully. I'm started to look here, and there's like a little white kind of blanching on it. There's something whitish on the surface. Can you all see this? Just on this side alone. It doesn't seem to be on that side, but on this side. And this is very typical, I know. So I would probably try to clean that, and maybe that is previous mold infestation. Sometimes the mold is white in color, sometimes it's dark black in color. Other times you have what's called pigmented fungus, so it could be pink. So we would want to reduce that. And the edges here, you can see how some of this is darker and damaged. So maybe this wasn't wrapped, properly previously. It was open.
Just when you're on the subject of mould, is also be aware that if you're handling something that's got mouldy, particularly if you see a kind of blackish mould on it, this is actually quite toxic to us as humans. So you need to take care. Wear a if it's very bad, wear a mask. A dust mask, and also if you've been handling it, wash your hands before you eat and before anything. Make sure that you don't transfer any of the mold, because some of it is really quite toxic, and if you have a book that's very badly affected, if it's been in a flood or something, you can become very sick, obviously, from ingesting mold. So take care and protect yourself, and just when you see something that's quite moldy, the other thing is that it will be very fragile, because the mold attacks the sizing, which is the glue that within the sizing which in the paper, and so anything that's been mold damaged is probably going to be really fragile, and it also sometimes will make any inks or pigments will actually make them much more soluble, because again the mold attacks the binding medium in there.
But you wear gloves as well.
Yeah.
If you can, but obviously the nitrile gloves too. And then a lot of the times if we see mold, then we take it from one place and we put it to another, so it's not near the other material, if it's possible. Yeah. So again, we're seeing more of it here, and why is it important to look after yourself? Because doing it a couple of times and handling moldy objects a couple of times is okay. But if throughout your life you are handling many moldy objects, then it's cumulative exposure, and then you accumulate this sensitivity and you have problems. So we just look after our precious rebirth, really. Yes, and the lab coats, we have lab coats, which is another great thing. So that helps to protect you. It's what everybody knows about personal protective equipment now because of COVID. So that really helps, but it also helps protect the object, because sometimes you have fibers coming off. And what is dust? Does everybody know what dust is made up of? Tell me. What's dust? What's dust made out of? I didn't hear.
Minute particles.
Minute particles, yeah. And sometimes the particles, a lot of the dust actually are skin, hair fibers off of the cloth, outside dust. And even from my jumper, if I'm doing like a repair, white on white repair, then that can come onto the object that I'm working on. So that's not so good. So the lab coats protect us, and they also protect the object. Yeah, and it has pockets, so it's very handy. Yeah.
And I'm looking at the time. Do you think we should go on to start discussing the condition reports?
Yes, I think that would be good. But because everybody's happy with handling this material, you'll do it all the time. I guess the only other thing I would say is I see a lot of this in traditionally where people pick it up and they hold it the other side and then they turn it over, and they're doing it really fast. But when they're older objects and maybe you're not using it in a ritual setting or in a practice setting, maybe you can go a little slower, because whenever you hold it kind of hard like that, you're forming creases. So if you can, because it's a very magnificent thing, if you can turn it a little more slowly and maybe not a grab, that might be helpful. If it's possible. It might not. That's it, really. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so occasionally the surface is painted, especially you can have illuminations on the surface of the paper. Maybe it's you have different deities that are there. Maybe you have a Guru Rinpoche, and maybe you have Tara or some other deity who is there. And sometimes the paint on the surface might be flaking. So when you look at that before you handle it, and if you flex it, obviously like the tanka, the paint may come off. But these are things that when you're working with your other people, then you need to explain to. That's how I explain to people. So maybe you can explain that way or even better way.
Any gloves you use? Any gloves you use?
I tend not to use gloves with this because it is it's so thin. I think I'm going to cause mechanical damage, so I just wash my hands. I'm not going to come into contact where I think mold might be, but if I needed to come into contact with that, I would wear the gloves. But I would wear gloves that fit me perfectly.
That's very important. Yeah. I normally actually don't wear gloves, but I've hurt my finger and I just can't wash my hands properly, so that's why I am wearing them. I find it's easier actually, you've got more sensitivity, with your bare hands. As long as they're clean, it's fine.
And we don't want blood on the text.
Yeah.
Madam, do we have a scientific explanation about becoming darker? Is there any way we can prevent further darkening?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is a really good question. We've got darkening along the edges of the text block. Some is dark, some are dark here, some are dark there. And that, we use a lot of incense. And incense sometimes, it has in a resin and that could rest there. Maybe it was dust, maybe it was maybe it was, it got wet. Well, we know it got wet because you can see the water stain there. So the best way to prevent this is to make sure that your environment is good, because we're focused on these objects, but our biggest object is the house within which it is in. So maybe it's in your gompa, or maybe it's in your library. So you look after that and you wrap it, and that's the best way to do it. This is a barrier against dust. So this is your first line of defense, and if it's just oxidation, which I don't think this is just oxidation, I think this is a combination of dirt, moisture, everything, then you know, that's to do with the environment. Just replace these.
I mean, the traditional practice of wrapping manuscripts is a sound one, because it stops insects getting to it. It prevents the worst of dust and dirt, and it just prevents.
Okay, so it
forms an envelope.
Yeah. So it goes capillary action. So it goes from outside and goes in. Yeah. Yeah.
So what we have the latest technology is to dry the air. Dry the air in the temperature.
Meaning you control dehumidifiers.
Dehumidifier.
Yeah, right.
So we have. Do we have any ideal temperature that can be favorable for kind of maintaining this kind of?
Yes, there are ideal temperature, and really the damage happens with temperature range. So you can, what we call incorrect temperature and incorrect humidity. So we can give you the specifications for that, but those are based on the global north. You are in a different environmental conditions, so you need to set what are good environmental ranges for you here in this space. But it's really to do with the fluctuation. So the dehumidifiers are good, as well as fans to change the air. Then that will help. And maybe having open windows in a storage area is not so good.
Yeah, ventilation is good,
yes.
But just.
Which one?
I think that natural cloth, cotton. Is very good. You know, what was traditionally used. This is not a traditional dye. Linen is good. So something, and also anything that's not going to, if it gets wet, is not going to spread into hair. There's no 100% I wrap this in it and then everything is fine. Unless you vacuum pack it and then put in silica gel, that would be the only way. Which is what some people do, but you can do that the whole time. Yeah. Yeah, because what is this? Cotton, okay. Yeah, cotton's great. Yeah, it's very good. Guys, one thing with the dehumidifiers have to be the size that is in relation to the capacity of the dehumidifier has to be based on the cubic square meterage of the room. The other thing is that you can set the dehumidifiers to a particular area. So maybe you want the normal ranges. Maybe we can say 45 to 50. But what is actually achievable? In Tibet, it's wonderful. It's very dry. We're good, no problem. It might not be able to achieve this. But what we tend to do is record. You need to know what is the real temperature, what is the real humidity, and can I adjust it? I think that's. Bear in mind that really in the standards they say you want it to range plus or minus 5%. Yeah. That's not possible. So if you can try and do that, with the building and air change and putting these protections, then that's very good. Be very watchful, because knowing that mold starts to germinate, it starts to become active at 60% RH. And where I'm staying, it's between 80 and 95% RH. So you make sure if the mold will not come unless there's dust, because the mold survives on the dust and it's everywhere. So it's like the causes and conditions for mold to come are the dust and then the humidity, and that's what happens.
Doctor, क्या करता है आपको? हाँ? क्या करता है? अरे हाँ, एग्जामिन करता है. टॉर्च है? टॉर्च है यहाँ? Where's the torch? Do we have a torch? Oh.
My first son didn't bring me. It was really stupid. I always have one on your mouth. Yeah, here.
Huh? No, mobile phone is okay. 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 Torch. So, हाँ क्या? दिखाओ. Okay. So टंग में देखता है. So एग्जामिन करता है ना डॉक्टर. कहता है खड़े हो. ठीक है. ये निकालो. पहले निकालने को बोलता है. तो ऑब्जेक्ट में भी जब कुछ चीज़ होता है तो उसको पहले निकालना पड़ेगा. ओके. बिल्कुल वैसे ही होता है जैसे डॉक्टर काम करता है ना. एंड उसके बाद फिर वो टॉर्च लगाता है ना. टॉर्च लगा के देखता है. करने को कहता है. फिर थोड़ा नब्ज देखता है. ठीक है. थोड़ा हार्ट देखता है. ऐसी चीज़ें करता है. तो ऑब्जेक्ट को भी ये करना पड़ता है. तो अगर आपके यहाँ पर कुछ दाना है, हाँ, तो डॉक्टर क्या करेगा? क्या करेगा? रिमूव इसको वैसे तो. हाँ हाँ, क्या क्वेश्चन करेगा? ये 1 हफ्ते से हो रहा है. वो टाइम में क्या खाया? मैं थुकपा, लाफिंग. अच्छा वैसे होता है. अच्छा अच्छा, और क्या पूछा? तो ये जो, हाँ यस, और क्या? तो तुम्हारे ख्याल से क्या क्या हो सकता है? जो मेरे अगर बॉडी में लाल लाल दाने हो रहे हैं, ये क्या हो सकता है? मस्कीटो बाइट. और क्या हो सकता है? एलर्जिक रिएक्शन हो सकता है. और क्या हो सकता है? इन्फेक्शन हो सकता है. और सनबर्न में नहीं होता. हाँ ओके, ऐसा हो सकता है. और क्या हो सकता है?
हाथ छूना सबसे ज्यादा. हाथ छूना.
वो तो रीजन है. रीजन है. लेकिन बिकॉज ये पहचानना जरूरी है. मीजल भी तो हो सकता है. मीजल्स और चिकन पॉक्स भी हो सकता है. डू यू रियलाइज कितनी सारी चीजें हो सकती हैं? तो यहाँ पर भी आपको बहुत सारी चीज दिखता है. तो किसी चीज को देख के सीधे ये मत कहो टर्माइट आ गया, या ये मत कहो कि रस्ट हो गया, है ना. सब कुछ माया है, सब इल्यूजन है. ठीक है. दिखता है छोटा छोटा दाना, लेकिन वो चिकन पॉक्स हो सकता है, प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है. नहीं, इजंट इट? सो किसी भी चीज को सही करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि आपकी नज़र और आपका एक्सपीरियंस उस प्रॉब्लम को पहचाने. एक बच्चा भी जब रोता है ना, एक बच्चा जब रोता है तो अलग अलग तरीके से माँ पहचानती है कि ये खाने के लिए कर रहा है, या इसको पॉटी करनी है, या इसको किसी चीज़ से ठंडा लग रहा है, या पेट में दर्द है. यू अंडरस्टैंड? सो आपने भी पहचानना जरूरी है कि सबसे, क्योंकि अगर आपको उसमें डैमेज दिखेगा ही नहीं तो क्या हम ठीक करेंगे? आपने पहले पहचानना होगा. अरे ये पेंटिंग में छोटा छोटा ब्राउन ब्राउन रंग का स्पॉट आ रहा है, ये प्रॉब्लम है. सोनम जी को बोलो प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, ठीक करो. क्योंकि अगर तुमने नहीं पहचाना कि वो ब्राउन स्पॉट फंगस का उगने का शुरुआत है, तो पूरा कलेक्शन खराब हो जाएगा. यस. अगर आपको ये कॉपर का मूर्ति में आपको बड़ा बड़ा हरा रंग दिखेगा, तो आप क्या करोगे? आपने पहचानना है ये बड़ा बड़ा हरा रंग पूरा हरा हरा हो गया है, ये डैमेज है कि नहीं है? कुछ तो है ना. ठीक है. तो पहचानना जरूरी है. तो अभी हम थोड़ा सा एक्सरसाइज इसका करेंगे कि उसको पहचानेंगे. ठीक है. तो क्योंकि कल आपने ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछा था कि मटेरियल्स को पहचानने का ज़रूरत है. सो सपोज सपोज ये ऑब्जेक्ट है. इन द मॉर्निंग एन कह रहा था ना कि ये कैसे बना है ना. उसका संरचना क्या है, व्हाट इज इट मेड ऑफ। तो अगर ऐसे रंग का मेटल दिखता है, ये मेटल क्या होता है? हैं? हाँ, ब्रॉन्ज नहीं, ब्रास। ब्रास सोने की तरह दिखता है लेकिन सोना नहीं होता है। तो आप कह रहे थे ना आइडेंटिफिकेशन कैसे करना है किसी चीज का, क्योंकि जब एक कंडीशन रिपोर्ट बनाएंगे, डॉक्टर एक प्रिस्क्रिप्शन नहीं लिखता है, ये आदमी है, इसका एज इतना है, ये मेल है या फीमेल है, फिर इसको क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम हुई है, फिर बताता है कि मैं क्या दवाई दूंगा। फिर अगली बार जब आप आओगे तो वो आपका दवाई वापस मांगता है, आप मेरा प्रिस्क्रिप्शन दिखाओ कहता है, पुराना वाला। फिर वो देखेगा पिछले बार ये दिया था, उसके वजह से इसको ये हो गया, अच्छा हो रहा है, चलो और ट्रीटमेंट करते हैं, नहीं तो थोड़ा मेडिसिन चेंज करेगा। सो लाइक दैट हमको आर्ट ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए भी एक रिपोर्ट बनाना होगा, ओके। और इसमें आइडेंटिफिकेशन करना है, जैसे आपने आज तनख्वाह का आइडेंटिफिकेशन किया। डिड वी आइडेंटिफाई एनीथिंग एल्स other than, because here they seem to know. Did they identify anything else in the morning? Abhi we only this, no?
On this, oh yeah, they talked about this.
A little bit of this.
Yeah, they did this one. Yeah,
Okay.
And the metal one a little bit.
Oh, they did.
But not the condition.
No, okay. So अगर हम एक एक करके ऑब्जेक्ट लेते हैं, हाँ, सबसे पहले हम बोलते हैं टुडे, अभी अगला 15 मिनट तक हम देखते हैं क्या चीज़ आइडेंटिफाई करनी है डैमेज की, ठीक है, ओके। तो सबसे पहले आपने पेचा ये देखा था सुबह, इसमें आपको डैमेज दिखा था, ओके। सो आपसे पूछता हूँ छोटा सा तरीका, ये जो ऑब्जेक्ट है, ये ऑब्जेक्ट क्या है? मुझे जल्दी जल्दी आंसर कर दो कोई भी। ये ऑब्जेक्ट क्या है? मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है, ओके। और अच्छा, यहाँ दो ग्रुप है ना, एक ग्रुप इंग्लिश में बोलना और एक ग्रुप टिबेटन में, है ना, या टिबेटन कहते हैं या क्या कहते हैं, भूटी कहते हैं, हाँ, टिबेटन में। तो ये क्या है? ओके, सो वी कोई लिख रहा है, नोट कर रहा है कोई? यू वर सो नाइस, थैंक यू वेरी मच। If you don't want to, so no, she really typed everything out yesterday. Then she put it in proper writing and sent me. So मुझे guilty feeling हो रहा है, इसलिए मैं आपको देख भी नहीं रहा हूँ। वो बोले कि ये तो पीछे पड़ गया, ये जितने बार मुझे देख रहा है बोल रहा है काम करो मेरे लिए। No, but it's good to make notes. Somebody here would like to make notes? I think you are good at making notes. हाँ, okay, yeah, put your sleeves inside. Yeah, okay. So this is manuscript पेचा, ठीक है। उसके बाद किसने बनाया, किसने लिखा है ये? हाँ, कौन एक्सपर्ट? डू यू नो द नेम? वी डोंट नो, चलो ठीक है, वी डोंट नो, ठीक है, ओके। सो पता नहीं। उसके बाद अगला क्या है, ये कहाँ पे था? नहीं, वो तो पहले का, अभी ये कहाँ पे था? लाइब्रेरी में था। हाँ, पेंजू में है। पेंजू इज द लाइब्रेरी, LTWA लाइब्रेरी, पेंजू, LTWA पेंजू, ओके, पेंजू में था, ठीक है। पेंजू में किधर था? तो उसका लोकेशन चाहिए, कौन सी जगह में था, ठीक है, पता चल जाएगा। हाँ, इसके बारे में जब हम कुछ भी काम करेंगे, इसके बारे में किसको कांटेक्ट करना है? हु टू कांटेक्ट? पक्का? सोनम, उनका नाम लिख देना और उनका नंबर लिख देना, तो ताकि tomorrow if you want to find out about this, you know who to contact, okay? Okay, after that इसका जब रिकॉर्ड बनेगा, like this team, your hand, these guys, हाँ, एक ताली बजाओगे इनके लिए? Okay, they have, इन्होंने in their Tibetan museum, what's it called? Tibet Museum Storage section, they have, ये also to note down, ये जो report है, this report is what we have made, okay? There are other suggestions which Anne and Teresa and Mike have given, but you will change it according to your thing. This is just to illustrate what are the things we must keep in mind. Please note, You don't have to use this for your works because you have made very good reports also. So if you find something good in this, take it. I have found something good in your report, I have put it into this report also. Please note. Okay? Treatment file, always make a file, but you must know where to get it. Yeah, they have fantastic files. Okay? Excellent work. The other thing is object type. ये क्या ऑब्जेक्ट है? मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट तो है, बट किस टाइप का मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है ये? रिलीजियस मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है? व्हाट वुड यू पुट एज एन ऑब्जेक्ट टाइप? Put a manuscript. Yeah.
Then it wouldn't be a manuscript to me.
It would be a book.
Or you can say handwritten manuscript.
Handwritten. Okay. तो ये कह रहे हैं दो टाइप का, एक तो है हाथ से लिखा हुआ, हस्तलिखित, and one is block printed. Any other type? Only two types, mainly. Okay. So block printed can also come under print category, but in this one, this is what? Handwritten. So object type, you can put object type handwritten. Is it illustrated? Yes. इसमें कोई चित्र वित्र है क्या? है स्टार्टिंग में? इस डिजाइन को कुछ यहाँ कहते हैं आप यहाँ की लैंग्वेज में? एनी नेम इसको कुछ कहते हैं? ये डिजाइन को कुछ कहते हैं? नहीं? नथिंग स्पेशल. ओके, ठीक है. ओके, एक और चीज लिखा है इसमें, प्रोवेनॉन्स. इसमें एक और शब्द है प्रोवेनॉन्स. उसमें भूटी में क्या लिखा है? नहीं, उसको भूटी में पढ़ो. कमेजुंगू मीन्स कमेजुंगू. हाँ, ओरिजिन. तो इसका ओरिजिन क्या है? तुम्हें टिबेटन उसमें दिख रहा है इंग्लिश के अलावा? हाँ. सो ऐसा होता है कि हमको पता नहीं होता है कंप्लीटली, तो नहीं लिखो, उसमें रिस्क है. क्योंकि जब आप लिख दोगे ना, इफ यू राइट, then people like us will think this is the truth. No, because we respect you. So we will then say this to other people, and we will say this to other students. So I will be passing down a untruth. So please be very responsible when we are putting down this origin. Okay? And if you think it is from some place but you are not sure, then put it in bracket and write please check, I am not sure. और एक और चीज होता है, when you say it is, suppose I write in the central Tibet, I will put here, what is your name? Nawang.
Yes. Nawang. NGA.
Nawang. Okay. Okay. But there are so many Nawangs. Then?
I am Nawang from Solan.
Nawang from Solan. Okay. So then I must write Nawang from Solan and phone number. You have phone number? But you change every time? You don't change? Okay. Then, so that anybody wants to check, he can check with him. Please note, this is not, this is serious, because we are talking about museums. We are talking about library. We are talking about the cultural heritage of Tibet. As it is under risk. So please remember, joking we are doing, but it is a matter of great personal integrity. It is about responsibility of not taking our terms and history of our heritage as a joke and say, ho jayega. No. Please take this as a big responsibility. Good to write down things, but also always make that extra effort to mention where you've got this information from. That is what makes you as scholars, and that is what will make you like historians. That is what will make you as preservers of your cultural heritage responsibly. Huh? So provenance. Kabhi kabhi provenance is also written like this was in the collection of His Holiness and donated to this museum on this date. So that is also a origin. कहाँ से आया? कहाँ से आया? है ना? अनुपम शाह, इसका ओरिजिन क्या है? हाँ, नैनीताल. लेकिन कहाँ से आया? वर्कशॉप हुआ था और उनको बॉम्बे से बुलाया और वो बॉम्बे नैनीताल से गया था और पैदा देहरादून में हुआ था. तो उसका एक पूरा प्रोवेनांस, उसका हिस्ट्री मिल जाएगा पूरा. तो केवल 1 पॉइंट होता है, लेकिन अगर आपके उसके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन मालूम है तो लिख देना. ओके. और ये प्रोवेनांस ये लोग लिखते नहीं हैं बिकॉज उनको बड़ा प्रॉब्लम लगता है. इजी वे, हम लोग अपने कल्चरल हेरिटेज को इजी वे में लेते हैं. सो थोड़ा इसमें ख्याल करना. एंड इफ यू डोंट नो, डू नॉट राइट इट. ओके, प्लीज चेक इट. नेक्स्ट इज टाइटल और थीम. इसका कोई टाइटल है? इसका टाइटल
in Chinese.
In Chinese?
About in Chinese. Japanese. 18,000 words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jatonga.
इस मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट का नाम क्या है?
Jatonga. Tibetan Jatonga.
Okay. So ये लिखोगे गेतोंगबा. हाँ? ओके. अच्छा, उसके बाद पीरियड. पीरियड
12th century.
12th century.
Yeah.
12th century.
सच्ची में?
You think so?
So सच्ची में 12th century?
No. The text was written in 12th century. The text was written in 12th century, not this.
Text was written in 12th century. Good point. So the text was of 12th century and then it may have been rewritten later on. So वो जो लिखा है उसका कोई डेट है? क्योंकि कभी कभी लिखते हैं दिस मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट को कॉपी करा गया, इसने कॉपी किया, लिखा है ऐसा कुछ है?
We have copy and scan.
हाँ, so this.
Yes.
इसमें लिखा है इंग्लिश में कोलोफोन कहते हैं ना, कोलोफोन. इसका कोलोफोन इसको पढ़ो. क्या लिखा है शुरू का? कौन पढ़ेगा? पढ़ोगे? हाँ. इसमें देखो किसी का नाम लिखा कि ये कॉपी किया था, कुछ किया था.
ये तो इसमें तो पूरा वो सूत्र लिखा है.
हाँ, इसमें नहीं है. इसमें देखो
लास्ट में ये.
हाँ, लास्ट में देख. इसमें क्या है?
ये लास्ट पेज. I think last page.
Can you take a photograph?
Usually we write
discussion
on last page.
हाँ, लिखा है. हाँ, क्या लिखा है? यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? Just take one shot of all of them. This one here. Okay, now we will do this. Title theme हो गया. Period. मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट रिटन उस समय का, और थोड़ा सा रिसर्च करके पता चल सकता है इसका पीरियड क्या है. ठीक है, क्योंकि उसका कॉपी जो बना था वो कौन से समय में बना था? 1860s, 1800, 19th सेंचुरी, 16th सेंचुरी, 18th सेंचुरी, 19th, कुछ भी हो सकता है. ठीक है, वो देख लेना. उसके बाद है देखो नंबर ऑफ पार्ट्स. ये कितने हिस्से में है? अगर ये है नंबर ऑफ पार्ट्स, ये तो वन ऑब्जेक्ट है, लेकिन इसके पार्ट्स कितने हैं? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 सपोज. हाँ, या 6, या यहाँ से ये निकलेगा तो 7 हो जाएगा. ठीक है, ओके. सो यू डिसाइड, वो देखना कितने पार्ट्स में है.
Sir, in our case we usually say, for example, this tuba, although it has many parts, none of it is detachable. So we say one.
हाँ, one part.
But it's one part, it's one whole, but made up of multiple parts. We're going to talk about the chariot now. No, I'm joking. But this can be removed So, and it's already coming away. So you can say it is a stupa which has been constructed out of how many segments, maybe 8, segments or whatnot, maybe a way of doing it. You all have to decide and just be consistent. Okay.
Because usually in our case what we do is for the section of number of parts, if there is any detachable part, for example, there are statues which are placed on pedestals.
Yes,
so in that case we say 2 or 1.
Fine.
Yes. Yeah. So whatever system you have, follow that. Okay. ठीक है ना? हाँ, because लकड़ी का भी जो मूर्ति बनता है, वो एक लकड़ी से नहीं बनता है. ये अलग पार्ट होता है, ये अलग पार्ट होता है, ये अलग होता है, ये अलग होता है. सो एक ही मूर्ति है ना? लेकिन बाद में जब किसी चीज़ को अलग अलग करते हैं जो डिटैचेबल होता है, उसमें नंबर ऑफ पार्ट्स लिख देना. सो लेकिन वो कह रहे हैं कि कंसिस्टेंट रहना, फिर पूरा इंस्टीट्यूशन ने सेम सिस्टम फॉलो करना चाहिए. ठीक है. उसके बाद है मटीरियल्स. ये किसका बना है? क्या लिखोगे? किसका बना है? आप किसके बने हो? हाँ, मीट. हाँ, मीट का बना है ये. मीट. हाँ, मीट एंड बोन. ओके. ब्लड ऑल्सो. मीट, बोन एंड ब्लड. ओके. सो ये किस चीज का बना है? और व्हाट एल्स? वुड का कवर है. ओके, वुड कवर है. और क्या है? कौन देखेगा? किसको दूं चांस? यू वांट टू ट्राई? कम. पेंसिल यहाँ से अलग. कभी भी आर्ट ऑब्जेक्ट के पास पेंसिल नहीं. पेंसिल रखो, पेन नहीं रखना. हाँ, उसको पीछे कर दो. You impressed upon them very well not to have this. I didn't even tell him that. He just put it at the back. Yeah. Rice paper, sir. Rice paper. इतना नहीं, डिटेल नहीं. ये आप बिल्कुल अपना ज्ञान दिखा रहे हो ना. ज्ञान नहीं दिखाना है. कागज है, पर कागज. वो राइस है या मलबरी है या शुगर है या कुछ ना, बाद में. अभी मेन. कैमरे में कैसे होगे जब यहाँ नहीं खड़े होगे तो. हाँ, जरूरी है. हाँ, बताओ. पेपर हो गया. और क्या है? वुड भी है. और क्लॉथ है. और इंक कहाँ है? अंदर इंक है. नहीं, दिखना चाहिए ना. ऐसे थोड़ी ना कि बोल दोगे इंक है. अच्छा, कभी ये इसको उठाना है ना, अगर कभी कागज को उठाना है ना, अगर लो पकड़ो. ये देखिए यहाँ खराब है ना, है ना, इसलिए ऐसे रखो इसको. रुको. हाँ, ठीक है. लो एक और कागज लो. चल, इसको पकड़ो यहाँ से ऐसे. देखो ऐसे पकड़ो ना. कभी कभी जब बहुत वीक होता है ना, पलटो. हाँ, ऐसे करके. ठीक है. अब इसको हटा दो. ठीक है. हाँ, अब बताओ किस चीज़ का बना है ये? किसका बना है? हाँ, इंक है. और बस. कौन बनेगा करोड़पति? हो गया. टाइम हो गया. ओके, गो. नाउ हु एल्स? एनीबडी एल्स वांट्स टू ट्राई? इन्होंने आउट ऑफ 5 ही इज गिवन 4. 1 ही हैज मिस्ड. ही हैज गिवन ऑल मटेरियल बट ही फॉरगॉट 1 मटेरियल. यू वांट टू? कौन ट्राई करेगा? किसके कलेक्शन में है पेछा ज्यादा? देबो, I'll just call you 10 minutes. हाँ, हाँ, बताओ. हाँ, आओ, कम ट्राई योर लक. ये देखो क्या दिख रहा है इसमें. इतना इंपॉर्टेंट चीज नहीं बता रहा कोई मुझे. ऑल द कवर्स, ये लोग कवर्स को रीइंफोर्स करने के लिए अंदर कपड़ा डालते थे. नो, बट वो वाला क्लॉथ कह रहा था. ओके. All the covers usually have a layer of cloth inside. Their first covers usually have a strip of cloth.
Okay, and that's only a small
Yeah. It's here and here on both sides. Because then they put the markings and other things. हाँ, okay. चलो, ठीक है. Done. Okay. Material हो गया. Last, चलो last thing. डिमेंशन डिमेंशन, साइज क्या है, साइज, रूलर है, रूलर रूलर रूलर, साइज क्या है, साइज साइज, साइज साइज क्या, सो इसका थिकनेस, लंबाई और चौड़ाई, ठीक है, 10 सेंटीमीटर और वो एंड दिस, ओके, ठीक है, ओके, ये हो गया. नेक्स्ट इज मटीरियल एंड टेक्नोलॉजी. Material and technology. Do you know how paper is made? Do you know?
Rice paper.
हाँ, कैसे बनता है? One second. किसी को मालूम है कैसे बनता है? अच्छा, one second. Excuse me. आप लोगों को किसी को मालूम है ये कैसे बनता है कागज? मालूम है? अच्छा, इनको मालूम है, लामा जी को मालूम, ये बताएंगे. ओके, बैठ जाओ सब लोग. अच्छा, चाय आ गया क्या? चाय आ गया, चलो. ओके, राइट. वो मटेरियल टेक्नोलॉजी मतलब कैसे बनाए कोई चीज, ठीक है, ऐसा ये बना है, इसका मटेरियल क्या है, फिर इसका कंडीशन क्या है, कंडीशन में क्या क्या डैमेज है, क्या क्या दिख रहा है, हेलो, क्या क्या दिख रहा है कंडीशन में, वो लिखना है, ठीक है. अभी आपको सबको एक एक कागज मिलेगा, आप लोग भरेंगे, ठीक है. और इसका पहले ये कंडीशन इसका ग्राफ में बनाएंगे, ठीक है. तो वेयर आर द ग्राफ्स, देन दे कैन स्टार्ट दैट वर्क. फोटोग्राफ्स, या, ओके, हियर टेक द वन फॉर द तंखा. हियर दीज आर तंखास, वन दे कैन सी व्हाटएवर दे कैन गेट. हियर लो, ले लो, कम, प्रैक्टिकल. only 10 people are allowed to do this exercise, not everybody. Those who are very interested, please come. कम. ये वाला स्टैचू कहाँ गया, ये स्टैचू, ये टेबल खाली करो, ये भी वहाँ पे है, आ जाओ. ये किसका मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट? हु वांट्स टू डू दिस? पेचा, पेचा का कंडीशन, ये वाला ब्लैक वाला, हियर ब्लैक वाला पेचा, ब्लैक पेचा कौन करना चाहता है? आप करेंगे ब्लैक पेचा, ओके. एनीबडी एल्स फॉर ब्लैक पेचा? सो कैसे मार्किंग करोगे? सपोज यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पर देखोगे कि एग्जैक्टली व्हाट इज द पेज दैट वाज हियर. तो यहाँ पर सपोज यहाँ पर देखो ऐसा है, यहाँ पर होल है, होल देखो, हेलो, होल है, तो वहाँ पर होल में होल ऐसे कर देना और ये लिख देना होल या छेद या जो भी अपने भाषा में लिखो, ठीक है. नो, ये नहीं, हाँ. अच्छा, ये इसमें डॉट है ना, पिन है, हाँ, तो देखो पिन, यहाँ पर ऐसे लिख लो, देखो पिन है, ओके, पिन का छेद है, तो लिख दो पिन का होल है, ठीक है ना. और क्या प्रॉब्लम दिख रहा है? यहाँ देखो, यहाँ पर टॉन है, ये पूरा कागज यहाँ पर ऐसा हो रहा ना, हाँ, तो केवल ये लेके देखो, यहाँ पे केवल ऐसा मार्किंग कर दो, ऐसे, हाँ, मार्किंग कर दो और ऐसा शेडिंग कर दिया, ठीक है. ये वाला पूरा ये डैमेज है, कुछ भी लिखना है मतलब बता दो, ठीक है. और क्या दिख रहा है? ये देखो, ये पूरा एज इसका खराब हो रहा है, तो इसमें ऐसे लिखो, ये पूरा एज खराब है, तो ऐसे लिख दो, फुल एज खराब, ठीक है, खराब, लाइक दैट, फुल एज खराब. क्योंकि हर जगह तो मार्किंग नहीं करोगे, जब पूरा ही डैमेज है तो ऐसे लिख दो, ठीक है. और क्या डैमेज दिख रहा है? बस, और कोई डैमेज नहीं दिख रहा है. ये देखो स्टेन दिख रहा है, स्टेन, दाग, हाँ, एक दो दाग दिख रहा है, तो जहाँ पर दाग दिख रहा है वहाँ पर मार्किंग करके लिख दो दाग है. इस एक्सरसाइज का उद्देश्य ये है, योर ऑब्जेक्टिव इज दैट योर आई शुड सी समथिंग and you put it down, so you're conscious of it. Because just now every day we are seeing the same, same pecha, kuch nahi, no problem. But you must see something and note down what you see. So I want marking like this, okay? whether it is the sculpture, and you have exactly 10 minutes. This exercise finishes in 10 minutes.
Actually, the front part is coming out and it's unstable. And also the bottom part is unstable.
Okay.
It's moving just as that. And also some of the top one is loose.
Okay.
And there's some dust at the back of this side, the edge, this edge. And some of the small, what we call things, these were also loose one.
Okay.
And she also mentioned the discolorations. I think the whole of the, whole were edges were discolorations.
Okay. Okay, very good. Next, any other new damage?
Nothing new actually. They have mentioned everything, but the front face, this one, the front part, as they have mentioned, is coming off. The detachable part, it's coming off. And over here, there is a dent that I've noticed. And also the middle part is, have been noticed as a weak point. It's pretty unstable. And all these stairs, stair-like, the shape, there are oxidation or discoloration turning into black, and there is a pink or a reddish paint stain, and then over here at the bottom we can see accumulation of dust and dirt or soot. These are ingrained dust, and over here they have also got a sticker, adhesive sticker. That's all.
Okay. Yes.
Tape Koran chejun de da ne legging ding is na legging ding tos chundos.
Legging chundos, right? Oh, the wooden, but he's saying the wooden board which has been used, it's a bit smaller compared to.
I think that's very good. Very nice, very good. That's very nice.
Any tanda din anole yige sub ni ta yige to me
Okay. Some text has faded away, or let's say it's not visible anymore.
Okay, some text has faded. Okay, yeah, okay.
That's so that's so that is a line of the nessul because someone nakuchas.
Oh, okay. There are nakuchashare. Oh, okay. There is blackening at the edge, entire edge.
Okay, blackening at the entire edge.
Yeah, darkening at the entire edge, and is also damaged.
Very good. Excellent.
So that wooden, our object is wooden, that Achurte stupa. So it has some crack where the part were attached, and also like a dust buildup and other. I'll leave it. Also, like there's a solutive glue residue also.
Hello, these manuscripts, Panjara Paramata, first page is black and gold handwriting, and picture. We have here a picture in Tibetan and Yarvatyomi, and back set, 15 pages damaged.
So he's saying, I'll just turn this around. 1 second. This. How many pages?
17 pages.
So he's saying,
17 pages.
Last 17 pages. Last 17 pages are damaged.
Damaged.
Okay, they are damaged.
Yeah, and front set cover is damaged.
The board damage.
Whole.
Layers of pages.
On the first page.
First page on the black.
First page is black, yes?
Yes.
There's a hole also.
Huh?
There's one hole in the middle.
Hole in the middle?
Yes.
There is hole, yeah. Hole, this, okay. Yes, there is hole in the middle.
And
इसका जो ये पेजेस, ये कितने पेजेस का बना है? देखो ये अंदर से निकल रहा है पूरा, अलग अलग हो रहा है ना?
वो नहीं
No.
नहीं? नहीं हो रहा, okay, ठीक है, so that's okay. So he is saying that this is part of the structure of the work.
Yes.
So ये भी जरूरी है to know that you can't make everything damage. It is part of the making of the object. हाँ, जैसे कुछ manuscripts में बीच में 2 होल होता है. It is not damage. It is designed for that. Okay.
Surface losses along the edge of the bottom.
Surface loss along the edge of the bottom.
We found the earlobe on his lap.
You found
The broken earlobe.
Where was it?
So we put it on his hand at the moment.
Okay.
And we noticed some dust deposition and soot, accumulation of soot, and some scratches and abrasion. And we saw his name on the edge of the throne, written in yellow. Front lower, yeah. Though they have done some minor repair on the hand, still the fingers are missing.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, this is it.
The first 2 layer title is covered with fabric,
Okay.
which is like the edges are getting shredded. Like,
Okay, edges of the fabric are getting damaged.
Yeah,
shredded.
damaged, yes. And then also the paper is colored black colored, and the edges are also getting discolored. It's becoming white, and then there are some wobbles on the pages. There's some wobbles.
Abrasion.
Yeah.
से रफ हो गया, एक abrasion. जैसे कोई खरोंच पड़ जाती है, खरोंच, इसको कहते हैं abrasion.
The third, maybe not third, in the photo, the middle part has some holes are there. It's damaged, and the first page has some stitchings. I don't know what they are for. And the page is made of black. It's a black paper. Since this stitching is actually of Naga stitching, purification, and there are three different chapters, and then one of that part is black Naga. So that's why maybe the reason the whole page are made of black paper. And the first 2 pages has many interesting meanings over there, written like different kind of dialects other than Tibetan. So these are interesting things.
Oh, the dialects are not in Tibetan.
Yeah, but the calligraphy is Tibetan, but the meaning is saying that from the different parts of ancient Tibetan kingdoms.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
The black one that he mentioned is maybe because of the pin. The rust remains.
Is this because
and
of
there's
the
a
pins?
stamp, and there's also one at the top near the registration number.
Yes, very good.
First one,
Very
and there are cuts at the corner edges, and the bottom corner is been torn, and there are minor folding marks at the another edge at the right side, and also there's a stamp of the library.
Stamp of the library, yes.
Yeah. On the textile, we noticed that it's pretty damaged as well, probably from aging, because the threads are mostly split, and there is a hole. Some parts are missing as well. It's torn. This one as well on the edges, more over the edges, and at the side it had probably become detached from here, and on the textile as well. At the end, at the lower bottom, if you see, they have done a marking with a probably with a marker pen, black colored marking. They have done a labeling over there. And as for the canvas itself, there is pretty visible water stain, and it's also there's also a curvy sort of wave.
Very good.
On the textile, on the canvas itself, and there are some white spots, colors, which is not with the original Thanga painting.
Yeah, there.
Yeah,
there.
And I've also noticed that the wood, which is used for the support, is also not leveled, as in, it's not in a straight.
It's warped.
It's like the. I don't know what's the word.
From here, it looks bowed, so it bows up that way. Yeah.
And they have used a sellotape, which is very obvious. And
one more thing is that actually in the edge of this too, there will be some silver or copper.
The finials.
Yeah,
they're missing.
So they are missing.
Not always. It could be wood, they could be anything, but the finials, which are traditionally there, are gone. Yeah, okay.
And the back of the Thanga is pretty damaged also with water stain.
Yeah. Yes.
The splits and
but
and this crease also.
The crease, yes. And then, what type of material is this made of? Does anyone know what type of material this is made of?
Silk.
It's silk, but how is it? It's a very technical term. It's a type of brocade, but it's got gold on top of paper, and the gold is made on the paper. The paper is sliced very, very tiny, and they use it and they weave it, and so they put it into the weaving. So you not only have just silk, you have silk and metal on top of this. So you can see right there, there's a little tiny piece right there that's folded over, and you can actually, if you use the magnifying glass, you can see that it's paper on the back of it. And so that's a technique, and this is what's happening in this, is these pieces, and they float them when they weave. They just, to make the design, they just go under the warp just a tiny bit to make the orange color. And this here, it's bigger. You've got empty spaces, and then you've got these, but you just take, to make all these designs, take a little bit of the warp, and then the paper and gold is floated over the top of it. So it's very fragile. And so it's coming up everywhere. This topic, you can see it lifting.
Yes.
And it's on this bottom edge, it's completely, it's gone in many places. So it's a type of damage that happens with these heavily brocaded, and they will have, it's gold and paper, or it's a composite metal, and sometimes, so this, to me, has not really any tarnishing, so it probably is. This is also metal, but it's a different color. And probably that means it had more copper in it than it did gold. And so they oftentimes, and the paper also, if they don't use pure gold, they will put orange or yellow on the paper and then put the gold on top of it. So when it starts wearing away, you get a different color. But this is probably because this content is copper, a little bit more copper than this is probably more pure gold. Yeah, and so you get the different, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of brocade with metal wefts. So that's in the textile sense. For me, that's a big problem, you know. And so, but it's can be fixable, but you have to understand will give you a different way of treating this, because it's got paper, and if you wet it or you get any solvents on it, the gold will delaminate, and so it's a really tricky issue. Yeah, so you have to remember that with these types of textiles.
जरूरी है ना जानना तो अगर इसको अगर मैदा पेस्ट से अगर कोई लाइन कर देता तो कागज पूरा निकल
The
जाता।
pigments, yeah, the pigments are probably, this is a 17th century.
मतलब जरी नहीं है।
Tanka. So most likely it's probably all natural pigments and possibly some dyes. They use indigo and they use lac. I think maybe there might be indigo in this deep color. And the black is probably, can be indigo in lamp black, which is soot mixed. But I don't see any unnatural pigments here. There wouldn't be any in the 17th century.
What would be the green?
Well, the green could be malachite or a mix, but it looks maybe like it's malachite. It's just darkened. It's darkened a little bit. It's more where there's a loss there. You see more of the malachite color. And I mean, it's the green here, though. I think it's a mix of indigo and a yellow, and then, so it could be a dye, a natural dye.
I mean, we don't know unless we actually do
analyze
analysis.
it. Yeah.
And sometimes there are other things like organic pigments.
Organic pigments, yeah. It will dye. We call it an organic dye. Then the pigment is a ground mineral, and the organic, you can make lakes and things, but that's very technical. But this, because of the age, we can almost say it won't have any. And the nice, I mean, not the nice thing, but the interesting thing is because the pigment has been washed away, you can see the underdrying, and that's really, that, I mean, that is a great thing sometimes, because then it can, sometimes there'll be color notations in Tibetan, and then if the pigment's washed away, you can actually see the color notation, and then you know what color was there. But on this, I haven't seen any color notation. And this also has gold. This has gold paint on it. Yeah, it's everywhere. The Buddha up in the corner, they all have, but it's hard to see.
It's a beautiful tanka.
It's gorgeous. This is a very fine tanka, and it's a Mahasiddha, so it's one of the 80. I think. Sorry.
Abhi condition आपने देख. Now we have seen this, right? You have seen the condition. That is important. What treatment is to be done, that treatment we will see later, okay? But the idea is to be able to fill up a form. The advantage with this, for those who are actually conservators, the advantage with this form is, you have a proposed treatment here, it fits into one page, and sometimes that is enough if you write in, concise, and there's a blank page at the back. Right? But the advantage with this is, once you've done your proposed treatment, when you do the treatment, if you have treated exactly as proposed, you simply have to add one row here that says treated as proposed, and your treatment record is complete. Right? And then maybe 5 things you do as proposed, and after that you add a few extra things. And then you add just those 2 points. So there's no point of making 10 pages of reports that is happening, and that is one reason in India you don't have treatment records. This is a very serious problem here. You will not find treatment records in our institutions because we have this, somebody in the 1960s created a format of 10-12 pages, So not only do you waste paper, but nobody has the inclination to fill all that up. This form is becoming popular. It's very concise, precise, finishes. And please remember, most of us who are working with institutions here, from the museum and from the library, if you start waiting to digitize everything, your reports will never be complete. Always make sure while you're working, you make your notes. Because those notes, the details they have, are never matched in your treatment record. So please make sure in handwritten notes you have everything in order. And you must keep your records in place. Okay? Alright. This is when you go into a collection. This is individual object. But now when you go back to your monastery, you will go into your collection. So you can't do one object at a time. You will go into, so this is again, when you go to a place, you know what the location is, who is the contact, number of objects. Anne was asking you on the first day, no, how many tankas do you have? How many, what is your biggest amount of this thing? So this gives you number of objects. So they can be different. You will then break it up into different categories. Okay? Period, material. So period will be 12th century to 18th century. Okay? Type of collections. What are the types that you have? Alright? Provenance, significance. Significance is very important. Even on the earlier one, you must, now the significance that you told here, iska significance kya hai? What is the importance of this tanka? Because if there is a funding, if you are proposing funding for the preservation of your collection, why should somebody spend 10 lakh rupees to treat some tankas when that money can be used for putting a children's wing also here? Let's be practical, no? So unless you have the significance or the importance of this outline, you cannot justify provision of resources or energy or time, your own personal time, to do it.